What's up, fam? You're watching Fireforge Gaming, and the looter shooter is one of the most popular gaming genres of all time. They engage the hunter-gatherer parts of our brains that reward us for finding things we know are useful and discovering new things entirely. Borderlands is one of my favorite games of all time, and it really nailed down what it means to be a looter shooter. And a lot of titles since have tried to imitate the form and function of Borderlands, and some have succeeded to varying degrees, and others really didn't. But none of them are really elevating the genre the way Borderlands did back in the day. Enter Godfall, the newest IP from Counterplay Games and Gearbox Publishing that's slated to release as a launch title for PS5. Godfall is described as a looter slasher, which is a clever way of saying it's a loot-driven game that sees the player using melee weapons instead of guns or ranged weapons. The combat is said to be Souls-inspired, with every enemy having different wind-up animations that you have to anticipate in order to dodge or counterattack. You'll find loot in the form of armor, called Valor Plates, and different kinds of weapons that change your attacks and playstyle. And up to 2 players can play with you in 3-player co-op. That's pretty much all we know right now without going unnecessarily in depth. That's not really what this video is about. What I want to talk about is how Godfall can succeed in elevating the looter shooter genre and standing out as a great game to kick off the new console war. And it's only natural that when you want to build a new game for a new generation that's based around loot, you'd look back at what made the last generation of loot-driven games so successful. For me, that means looking at Borderlands. You might also want to take a look at other loot-driven titles that maybe didn't do so well and find out what they did wrong. For me, that's mostly Anthem. Here are 5 ways that I think Godfall can succeed and design pitfalls that I think they need to avoid. Make sure to stay to the end of the video for the question of the day. Number 1, have a varied loot system. A lot of people fell in love with the story of Borderlands. And a lot of people like the art style. Most people enjoyed the humor. But every single player of the Borderlands franchise loves the loot. The reason why is that the loot is crazy and unique, but mostly crazy. You had all different kinds of guns, from pistols to assault rifles to snipers to shotguns, even rocket launchers. And there were different gun manufacturers that gave their guns different quirks, like Malawan guns had higher elemental damage, and Tidor guns could be thrown like grenades when reloaded. The variety of the loot system was the spice in Karen's unseasoned potato salad that would have been gameplay. Taking down a tough boss or raiding a loot stash was made exciting because you never knew what you were going to get, but you knew it was going to be something wild. So let's contrast that with a failed looter shooter. And honestly, what better place to start than Anthem, especially since BioWare and EA want to revamp Anthem and make it a successful shooter. Maybe they'll see this video and take some hints from a nobody with a YouTube channel. Anyway, Anthem's loot system came in the form of an outdated and unengaging engram system. The loot you found was all to do with min-maxing your abilities loadout with meager percentages and whatnot. I think what people were expecting with Anthem's loot was something with the potential to completely change the way you play, like Borderlands did with their guns. That's what Godfall needs to do. They need their loot to be game-changing. They need their loot to be varied, probably to an extreme degree. We know that Valor Plates, the armor that the characters wear, will be a core part of the loot. And hopefully, they drastically change the way your characters look, and it's not just like a more powerful version of the exact same helmet or whatever. Like I said, Godfall has to change the game with its loot, so each piece of Valor Plate acquired needs to affect the way the player interacts with the game. So maybe different Valor Plates unlock different abilities when wearing them, or allow the players to perform different unique abilities, or maybe it has a passive effect like buffing your character or debuffing enemies. Loot has to be interesting and exciting to use because of how different it makes the game. That's how you get players to want to go in search of enemies to kill over and over in the first place, which is kind of a core tenet of loot-driven game design. Number 2, make difficulty difficult. One thing I really don't like about any game is the concept of level gating. I hate it. I hate everything about it. No matter how good or immersive a game is, Its stock drops dramatically in my mind when you hit a door that's closed and will magically appear to be open when you've reached an arbitrary level, or when you take on a boss that you can't even do damage to, but he can still kill you, kick your dog, and steal your girl all in one shot because you were level 34 and not level 35. Yeah, I don't like that. That's not how you're supposed to convince your players to experience more of your content to get those levels. You gotta make them want to play that extra content. You gotta make it worth it for them. Again, Borderlands shows us how looter games are supposed to do this by making the effort to grind their levels fun and interesting, and rewarding players not just with new imaginary numbers, but with crazy loot. The loot you got could vastly change the way you played the game, giving you the option to tackle new threats and challenges in totally different ways. That's what should be hindering a player's progress in a loot-driven game. The way forward should be finding new ways to use the loot you've collected to overpower or outmaneuver dangerous enemies, not just have the patience to plink them down bit by bit. Which leads me to number 3, no damage sponges. I mean none. Seriously. The concept of an enemy boss being difficult not because he's hard to defend against or to get a good angle of attack on, but because it takes so many attacks to bring him down, is an outdated and kind of insulting concept. And I don't have to pick on just Anthem for this. I can honestly point to any looter shooter that's come out in the last few years and prove my point. Destiny's bosses were kind of just upscaled character models of mob enemies with insane health pools, and that wasn't much fun or difficult to fight. The Division had bosses that were literally just dudes in so much armor that they never need to take cover, and it takes 6 mags and a bunch of explosions to take them down. Is that hard? No, not really. Is it interesting? Nope. Godfall needs to not fall into the trap of sacrificing depth for playtime by giving its players chores to do rather than challenges to overcome. They need to find ways to make each boss fight engaging and unique in its own way. So, give one boss an impenetrable shield that you can't strike through, but if you flank them, they can't move fast enough to counter. Then, once you've beaten him and mastered that challenge, flip it around and send out a smaller, more agile enemy that can dodge your attacks and flank you. And now you have to figure out how to line up and time your attacks just right to land just 1 or 2 good hits on a lightly armored but very challenging opponent. They can figure this out for themselves, but they need to stay away from sponge bosses. I want boss fights in Godfall to be challenging to play, not a chore to endure until it's over. Number 4. Make the grind worth it. I probably could have rolled this in with number 2 or 3, but this really needs to be clearly said, so I give it its own number. I never want to say that grinding in video games is a bad thing. I don't think it is. I think there are good ways and bad ways to implement grinding. A good way might be the side missions in Borderlands. They introduced new elements to the world and the story. They featured interesting and funny characters, they challenged the player in different ways, and they often provided unique looting opportunities, with certain missions offering specific items or weapons you couldn't find anywhere else. All the while, the player was leveling up their character and getting ready for the next big stage of the game. I'm still not a fan of level gating, but that's a great example of how you implement a grind mechanic that's interesting, fun, and engaging. Then you have a game like Anthem, whose grinding system was universally despised by players. Side missions consisted of scavenger hunts and wave defenses, which are pretty boring to start with, but then, at a certain point in the story, you'd reach a mission that completely halts all forward progress until you satisfy certain objectives, like collect 150 shiny things, or kill 200 lizard bugs, and just re-experience every aspect of the game you've already done once before and said, nope, not fun, no point in doing it, and never want to do it again. Anthem makes you do all of those things to a nauseating degree if you even wanted to complete half of the story. I can't help but feel like this was the first moment most players' interest started to fizzle out as far as Anthem is concerned. There was no unique or special payoff for the grind, it was just more of the same. Godfall needs to respect the grind. It should be something I as the player want to take part in, rather than being told I have to do it in order to get what I want. Like being told to eat your vegetables or you can't go kill this awesome looking Hydra. Number 5. Dynamic endgame. This is where a lot of loot-driven games lose me and a lot of other players. It's pretty easy for dedicated gamers to completely burn through the allotted content in a loot-driven game, and be left with nothing else to do but wait for months while the developer scrambles to throw together a new content drop. Honestly, I find this to be a common problem that's not restricted to just Anthem, and it would be kind of unfair for me to only pick on Anthem for this. And honestly, I can't think of a loot-driven game right now that addresses this problem very well, but if Godfall wants to have any kind of post-launch success, its developers have to find a way to keep players playing Godfall after consuming the primary content, and in between new content drops. They have to find a way to make endgame content so engaging that they retain the player base months after launch. That could take the form of rotating quests and challenges, or seasonal events. I really don't know. That's one of the biggest challenges facing developers today. How do we keep our players interested in the content they've already experienced? These are just a few things that Godfall really needs to nail down if it wants to be successful in the coming age of gaming, where gamers have become extremely conscious about how they spend their dollar and their time. Godfall is coming to PS5 in the year 2020 or 2021, and we no longer stand for mediocrity. We want our games to be challenging, well thought out, and rewarding. We want to see things we've never seen before and make memories we couldn't make anywhere else. In 2020 and 2021, a game will not last if it can't deliver on those promises. And I hope Godfall can, but I'm watching it very closely. Now I have a question for you guys. Which game that's coming out this year do you think will win Game of the Year this time around? My money is on Ghost of Tsushima. I'm pretty biased about that. I fell in love with Japanese culture a long time ago, and I never miss an opportunity to experience it in video game format. But tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more gaming videos, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. If you want to see what kind of products I use for recording, editing, thumbnail art, even banking or investing, you can check out my affiliate links in the descriptions below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace!